Well, praise the Lord, hallelujah, and thank you, Jesus. It's around that time right here on KAZ Radio where I have one of my most favorite shows, Pause, Putting Myself First with Robyn and Honey. Take it away, honey.
Good evening, good evening, good evening on this brisk but kind of beautiful December evening. I'm excited to come back for another session. And tonight's topic is going to be kind of interesting because we're talking about grief. And grief is one of those subjects that sometimes when we talk about it in our communities and our families, it's just easier not to talk about it. Why? Because grief represents transition. It represents, in some cases, pain. It represents, in some cases, sudden loss. But it represents something that each and every one of us experience. So tonight, Robyn and I, we're going to unpack that. There might be some moments where we laugh, but there might be some moments where we ask for prayer, where we cry. And there might be some moments where you text some things in on one of the platforms you're watching that you want prayer and support from. And we just welcome that space in what I believe is going to be a very transparent conversation. If you are anything like me, anything like the rest of the world, 2021 saw itself bring some loss into your life. It just is. I don't care how you cut that, how you slice that pie, how you dice that pie. It's just been one of those years where even more than the first year of the pandemic, I've heard of more funerals this year than I have probably in the last 5. Myself, on this coming Friday, I will eulogize my best friend from high school. On Thursday, I will help to eulogize one of our teachers that we lost suddenly. Last month, it was helping to eulogize one of our students, and the list goes on and on and on and on. The topic is good grief. What do you do with grief so that you process that well when it's a subject we don't talk about? And not only the topic of grief as in to be absent from the body, but how do you grieve in a healthy way things that you lost when it just hurt? We lost some jobs this year. Some of us, we lost relationships this year. It has been a time of loss. But one thing I know about loss and rain and all those type of things we say that are kind of cliche is after the rain, and this rainbow appears, there's life again. What do you do with this process of grief, and how do you discuss it and live in it in a way that is healthy? So that's our topic tonight. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm here. I am here. I'm going to try my best not to ugly cry today.
Ugly cry. I'm here with you. I'll ugly cry with you.
It's been rough. It's been rough. You saw my post about that uncle.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the record, this is loss number 3 in just the past few weeks.
Yeah.
In my family. We had cousin Sam die. I don't even remember when. It was like her funeral was right before Thanksgiving. And then my Uncle Mike passed right Friday after Thanksgiving. And then this is my Uncle Aaron, that uncle, who passed yesterday morning. And, not to just get on the morbid death grief, because there's more loss than just that, but just the irony of this loss. His animals. This is where I'm just stuck on this with his animals, because I am not an animal person. I am of the old school abuser where we had the animal in the backyard growing up. Like, I know, animal, don't call nobody on me. This is how we grew up. I'm like, these people who keep these pet lovers who are pet parents. I'm like, I don't understand how you all do this in these animals and have them in your house and be all loving on them and kissing on them on your bed. What is that all about? These animals, my uncle created attack dogs, right? Attack dogs. So I hadn't even entered my uncle's house in years, because when I would come, these big beasts would come running out of his house like what on gang, and yesterday, these dogs was crying.
Oh.
My God.
Oh.
They wouldn't leave from under the kitchen table because he had fell, and that's where he was found, in the kitchen. And the dog walker had come, and the dogs was under the kitchen table and would not come out from under the table. And the beasts were no more. And one of them, I was sitting on the front porch because I wouldn't go in the house. I didn't want to walk past them. So I was sitting there until my cousin got there and would open up the front door so I can go in the living room. And so I was sitting on the front porch, and the dogs came out the house, and one of them came right up to me like, help me.
Yep.
Help me.
Yep.
And I just said, I just told him, I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be there for an animal. I said, but my cousin JT's coming. He's coming, and he can help you. I don't know what to do for you. I don't know how to comfort an animal, but they just turned into babies that day for me. And it's the reality of grief. If these animals feel it, why do we act like we supposed to push on and not? So I did call off today because my intentions was to go into work and just go push on through. But if these animals was like, I'm done, I've clocked out, the monsters, I'm gonna lay on the floor today. I mean, the one was just like, there was one that had separation anxiety, I guess is what they said. He was just laid out on the floor. You just saw, to see literal tears coming out of a dog.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen it before in my life.
But isn't that the great neutralizer? Mm-hmm. And I use these words loosely, but kind of intentionally as well. Mm-hmm. It is this neutralizer for me because we all have a day. We do. We have a day. We all have an appointed time mm-hmm. to live. We have an appointed time to die. And we hear it all the time about that dash. What are we going to do in the middle of it?
Right.
We talk about it as it relates to our own lives, but what do we do in terms of preparing others for that process? Or how do we even, what you did today, healthy. Yeah. What you did today, well. So many of us, because we have that cape, is on us, super women. We get up the next day, and I talked to you last night. Mm-hmm. I certainly assumed you were going to be at work today too, because it's what we do. Mm-hmm. But what's one of the first ways that you grieve or have a good grief? You give yourself time and permission to grieve. Yeah. You don't just, to me, to not grieve, I would look at his dogs, what you described as beast. And it's so...
Prior to yesterday.
It's such a human response, how you mm-hmm. describe them too, because I could just imagine these animals, and I'm definitely not an animal person either, mm-hmm. looking like, help me, and you're looking at the dog like, help me. Right. Let's help each other. And how beautiful even that process.
They were babies after yesterday. I was like, oh, babies.
So are you on a very subtle way telling me that
I ain't no animal person. No.
Oh, okay, I thought you were trying to.
I mean, in my grief, I probably for a flash moment. Luckily my lease will not allow for it, but for a flash moment, because of my uncle, I was like, "Is there any way?" But I know that they also are attack dogs. This is my Vietnam uncle. Yeah, I can't. They may come to their senses and they won't be so sweet. You know what I'm saying? So I can't. But yeah, just knowing their vulnerability allowed me to say, okay, it's okay for vulnerability. If these big old beasts allowed themselves to be vulnerable today, allowed us into their home because they were not trained for that. I mean, this was my grandma's house. I felt offended when they wouldn't let me come nowhere near grandma's house all these years. But that day, they was like, mm-hmm. I got no fight left. Mm-hmm. Help me. So they let us in, and that vulnerability it was okay to be vulnerable. If the beast was vulnerable, I can be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm telling you, these is rot mixed with German Shepherds. And prior to yesterday, I never saw the German in these rots. Mm-hmm. I saw it yesterday, and all I could call them was babies. Come on, babies, come on. And I'm like normally petrified of animals and everything. I don't even let them get nowhere near me. But yesterday was. Okay.
But see, I think, Robyn, is one of the things, and I can say, as your sister, as your friend, a colleague, in community work or emotional healing through poetry, This is one of the things that I respect and admire so much about you is that word that starts with V, the vulnerability. You don't hide behind your title. You don't hide behind these degrees that you're seeking now, upper level degrees. You don't hide behind your ministry. You don't hide behind, I can't feel because I'm a therapist myself. You know, it's one of the things I've always enjoyed about your friendship, but particularly about your friendship in 2021.
Right.
That there was just such a vulnerability to it. And I know I could rest it all. Robyn, this is what it is. I can't dress this up. I can't make this sound cute because pain is not always cute. I'm not Rottweiler.
But that wasn't always me. I didn't know though.
Yeah.
I want to say 2020 and 2021 God was like, we're going to open the gates a little bit. And that's why I got a book that I need to write called The 10-Man Therapist. I didn't know my stuff was shut off for a long time. And I've been dealing with this journey into myself over the last year, trying to figure out how and when did I shut off. Because
intimacy, into me I see, into myself, intimate with me.
Right. And figuring this thing out because when my mom got sick, like I said, the floodgates opened up and I felt. And it was a little intrusive because now I'm feeling my clients and their pain. And it was like I was a rock star therapist for the longest time because people would say, how do you do what you do and not take on their stuff? And I thought I was just so awesome of a therapist to not take on their stuff.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I'm an awesome therapist, but it wasn't that I was wasn't that I was so awesome in that sense. It was part of me was shut down and I didn't know.
But if you could remember, and I remember exactly where I was when I connected with you, with your humanity and who you are spiritually. I remember I pulled over. You may not remember this or even know where I was. We were talking. And your mother was sick at the same time. My mother was sick. And I pulled over on Mayfield Road in the parking lot. And you just talked me through everything I was. To use that word in tonight's topic, I was grieving. I was grieving a life lost, a life I'll never have it. So it's not now as, people always live in that, there's always chance. Listen, I live in a very real world.
Yeah.
I live in a very real, listen, especially if you've had out-of-home placement situations in your life, and certainly I have, you look at that and you match it up now with early dementia and you get further and further lost into that world. So I grieved the possibility of what I wanted in the back of my mind. And I had to come to grips with that. So when you talk about grief, you're not just talking about, this is where illness comes into me too. People are not real with what they feel. I'm grieving what I wanted. I'm grieving a dream, a hope, a fantasy. And there's never going to be that. There's not going to be some folks sitting around, Thanksgiving table. It's not going to be, let's take the dog for a walk. Let's go on a vacation together as a family. That is not going to be my story. I can grieve that and we talk about what's next, find healthy ways to approach that grief. I'm not trying to scoop nothing as it relates to my life right now in 2021. Am I pushing under the rug? I mean, nothing. Yeah. There's nothing not off limits to God or even to the people in my close sacred space. I mean, I have any secrets for what reason? I don't heal that way. Yeah. And you don't heal in the darkness of trying to keep it to yourself and not being vulnerable. And someone said it today. It's like, honey, you just look weak, for lack of a better word. I said, just a little grief, baby. It's all right.
Yeah, we'll be all right.
And laughed it off. We all right.
That's the thing about grief is you grieve the relationship that was, and you grieve the relationship that never was. Yeah. And that's what we're, in this moment of grieving my uncle that recently passed. And I hope I'm not misspeaking because everything is so fresh. This is my uncle who went to Vietnam. This is my uncle that was wounded emotionally. And so he was not always pleasant. And I think sometimes when we get around together, we share pleasant stories. But for some of us, we don't have the pleasant stories.
Yeah.
And it might look dismissive to those who have not so pleasant memories. And it's not to be dismissive of those people. And I want them to know, oh, Lord, here we go. I want them to know we all have some hard stories and memories. It's just that when we get together, it's just not a good time to talk about them. Mm-hmm. And so, but I don't want them to think, why did I not get these wonderful stories? Because we can all get together and share some war stories too. Mm-hmm. But it's just not fruitful to get together and share sometimes what a mean cuss somebody could be at times. But you know, that's the part of grief that comes too. And we do have to, at the right time, give that air as well. Because sometimes we get stuck in our grief because we feel, I remember I had a client years ago who, she was stuck in her grief because I think she felt like it was going to be wrong to mention that her husband was not so pleasant. Mm-hmm. And so when I gave her moment, she had grieved for she was stuck for about a decade or more. And it was just on her face. And she just was grieving and just like she missed her husband. And so we just, tell me about him. And she got to talking. And somewhere along the line, she shared about his drinking and how mean he was. Mm-hmm. And once she got that story out good, she came back to life.
Yeah.
She got out there, got in the social club and got to doing some things. And all of a sudden, her life moved forward. Yeah. But she was stuck because she felt like she never got a chance to tell anybody that he wasn't as pleasant. And it doesn't mean that you hate the person. It doesn't mean that everything about the person was unpleasant. For some people, it might be. But we do have to sometimes give voice to both sides of the coin.
Sure. Even when it's hard to do that. Mm-hmm. I was telling you, I called you last night pretty much as soon as I got out the pulpit. I was trying to tell you the move of God. I was just so excited about church last night. And it was a wedding. And I went kicking and screaming. It's just not my genre. I just don't care on that level. Mm-hmm. Or at least I've told myself that. But one of the things in this moment as you're thinking, I had no idea. I knew I would speak to the groom. And I knew I would speak to the bride. I had no idea I would speak to him in regarding his wife. Mm. And so, but as God led, I was led to tell him, you're not married to someone for 30 some years and you not do a good job. And you take care of her until her dying day. Mm-hmm. You did a good job, but grief didn't win. But God brought you another queen because you were miserable. And his eyes just welled up with tears. Mm-hmm. But I had to speak to that too. For some people, they were probably like, honey, you mentioned that was a very
right,
real
like we
part
supposed to just box that, we supposed to just box that up and put it away,
No, you need to honor the realness of that because it's a part of his life and his healing journey and both of their healing journeys. And the minute that you put that under the rug, how do you heal in that?
Right.
And I think that's just part of it. We're having this very real conversation. That's part of what we do wrong. Mm-hmm. We just don't talk about the stuff that hurts and we don't talk about the elephants in the room. Even me, and I don't know if I told you this last night, but they called me, the bride and groom, mm-hmm. and I'm thinking, oh, your wedding night? Don't you got somebody better to be calling?
Right. Don't y'all got something better to be doing?
Right. I'm like, don't be calling me. And so, but what she said to me was pretty much the same thing that my makeup artist had said yesterday. She said, oh, honey, your heart is heavy. And she knew. Mm-hmm. That's why I always tell her, please pray before you do my makeup. Because on heavy days, I always tell her to pray first. Because I just recognize I'm so sensitive to how heavy I am when I'm heavy. Mm-hmm. And so she's always like, oh, I'm always praying for you with irregard, especially when I'm doing your face. And she said, well, I got a vision of your husband. So I was like, girl, stop the madness. And so I didn't think it. I said it. I was like, stop the madness. I hope she's listening because she'll tell you. I said exactly that. And she said, oh, he's a musician. She was like, God didn't tell you that. So I was just in such a foul mood with having to do this piece anyway. I was like, I don't want to. But then the bride and groom called to say something very similar. It was like, you do know that God is going to He's gonna give it right back to you, and we're gonna stand and celebrate in that same way. So it's like the same thing when you think you're grieving or not, or you think that God hasn't heard or understood you in that way. When you can turn your grief over to Him and still be active to life, not just active to your own healing, but active to someone else's happiness and someone else's joy in the midst of it. God still says all the questions I ask, like, have you forgotten about me? Or what a life, and this was the question yesterday, what a life wasted, just in transparency, spent your life in ministry or in service to others. You never stopped long enough to marry or have kids. You just never stopped, and it never really even mattered until now at this age when everyone around me is getting married or experiencing a different kind of life.
Yeah.
I told you the guy at the gas station, he says in the same day, I'm just doing a transaction, giving him a check for some things I bought. And he says, oh, honey, can I get your gas? And I said, I am not going to turn down a man pumping my gas. But in that moment, I said, wait a minute. I don't think a man has ever pumped my gas in my life. And he said, well, that is a shame. But let me start that. Then I sat in the car and I processed that, but I had to process it in a bit of grief. Why have I never thought about that?
Yeah.
Why have I never? Because I've just been living. I haven't dated. I've just lived. You know what I mean? So you had to, in a very real, transparent way, I had to grieve that, but take that to the footsteps of God and tell Him why I was grieving.
Yeah.
Am I upset that everybody around me is getting married? No. I just wonder God, what was your intentions with me?
Where's right? Where's mine? Or what is going on with my life? Yeah.
Yeah. Or what did I do wrong? Did I just get this whole process wrong?
Yeah.
And I say that a little bit in the presentation to them yesterday. I said it's not just me, everybody else out here too. You're thinking that. But then when I was there in my honest, transparent place, could I really be used not just for this bride and groom, as they said it last night, need a copy of that. I was like, I better get on the phone with me and ask for this copy on tomorrow. But to everybody else who's sitting there who want to grieve in the same way, grieve the kids you didn't have, grieve the degree you thought you were supposed to have by now, grieve the house you were supposed to get. And the list for me can go on and on and on and on. And I'm not weak to grieve. I am strong in that grief so that I don't hold on to it. And I can say, God, now that I've addressed the grief, what's your plan for my healing?
Let me shift this a little bit. We'll come right back to this in a second, but let me shift it because sometimes our spirits know something and are moaning and something, and you was in a space that you couldn't even explain for like 2 or 3 days, and you don't know what it was. But when you got up on that stage, your spirit was even still in a space.
You're right.
Something's going on that you don't know, but your spirit knows something. Because I was in that space. I was a mean something all last week. You don't even know. I was in a mean space. I done cut folk off, but my uncle was in transition and I didn't know it. My cousin told me, see, there's a thing in my family. I don't know what y'all believe, scripture may not support it, but I'm going to tell y'all, family members come back for our family, in my family. So she told me as we going, so traditionally in a dream or something, an ancestor or somebody gonna come back in a dream or a vision and be there when somebody's getting ready to go. That's how you know. So if you tell me Mama Junie, which is my great grandmother, or one of the great aunts, or somebody came to you in a dream, it's like, oh shoot, who about to get up out of here because somebody done came. So she told me, my cousin Erica, who's my uncle's daughter, said, how we got to talking about grandma, she said, when I came to visit my dad a few days before, I swear I saw grandma when he came to the door. It was grandma, bent over and everything, and then I blinked or whatever, and then it was him. I said, Erica, that was grandma. She was here with him the whole week before he was gone. I said, that's a tradition in the family. Erica didn't grow up with us like she should have. So she don't got the stories. I'm the keeper of the stories. If y'all see my bio on Facebook.
Erica is who, so we can follow?
Erica is my uncle's daughter.
Okay.
So, but Uncle Aaron's the nature, but he get up, move away, move down south, so he wasn't always around. So she don't have the stories. I'm the keeper of the stories of the family. I'm the one who sit with the old folk all the time. So I got all the stories, and I never wrote them down. So that's unfortunate. But I've been, ever since I was a little girl, I sit with old people. And that's part of my grief too, because everybody I'm sitting with, the crowd is getting smaller. But, so she's telling me this story. She said, I swear Grandma was at the door at the house when I came, and then it was my dad. And I said, Erica, in this family, they come. I said, that was Grandma. That was a sign. You just didn't know it was coming. So how'd I get on that? Because my brain is kind of fried today.
Sorry. It's okay.
But our spirits know stuff. So all week I was troubled because my uncle was getting ready to get up out of here. I was a little mean, a little snippy with folks, and I ain't going to apologize because some folks had it coming. But I wasn't mean to anybody that didn't deserve it. But I was kind of withdrawn into myself all week as well. And I didn't know what I was troubled about until yesterday. You were troubled all weekend. Your spirit was laboring in something. You were with your boys.
Yeah.
And you were sad and in a mourning state, or
Yeah.
I don't even know if it was mourning though. You was kind of in a something.
Yeah.
Because you even got up there and shouted and praised the Lord and preached, and it was at a wedding. And then you still came back and was just and then you got two words, like it's something. It ain't. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna put a pin in on your grief, but I don't think it's grief, but I'm gonna put a pin in there. We're gonna come back to this
Yeah.
because I think it's more prophetic than it is grief. And sometimes we got to recognize that as we balance mental health and spiritual health, sometimes our spirits are trying to tell us something. And that's why we always have to have that balance before we go run to pharmacology and run to something else, because sometimes our spirit is telling us something. You got to have a person who knows how to balance and say, wait a minute, what's going on with you? I had a client years ago who struggled with the serious severe depression. But what she also struggled with was her identity, and her identity conflicting with her belief system. And I had to keep telling her that there ain't no medicine in the world that's going to fix this. And she done went to the hospital. They was doing electroconvulsion therapy at Cleveland Clinic and all kinds of stuff. But the reality was, and that was a spiritual thing.
You see, I think that there are some things, and this might sound kind of morbid, but there are some things that you've got to be bold and brave enough to get into a place of acceptance and finding a pathway to your healing when you can't change the outcome. There's nothing that you and I are going to do that's going to change the narrative of yesterday. We will not bring your uncle back.
Right.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
But to be able to say we can process a pathway different no matter what that pain is, that takes some work and some bold tenacity to be able to face. Okay, there are years of my life that I won't get back.
Yeah.
But there are some small pieces. I was telling you yesterday, these preachers are everywhere and at this wedding. And the minute I stepped into the pulpit and I looked at her and she looked at me, I just knew. Like it's time. She looked at her husband like this is about to be over, and boy, and I just looked at the organist like you might as well. So I just told her, you here, so you might as well give him glory. Then it was just over. I'm like, I know I got a job to do, but we're gonna get to that afterwards. So when you're in a position,
And that wasn't your intention. That's what I'm saying. Your whole spirit was
introverted and in too much pain. I was in too much pain yesterday in fighting the assignment. I definitely wouldn't have gotten up there. Not against.
But it was in your spirit the whole time. That was the whole fight. Something, but it's not even just a fight about. It was more than just that whole. Something else broke in the spirit. I'm sorry. I'm going somewhere. Something broke.
To go there. You see, I can't.
Something broke. Something broke. All right, we'll come back. Let's go back to grief. We'll go back. We'll come back to this later.
But I will say that on my point to that particular moment, oftentimes while you can't change the outcome, you do have to pick where those rays of sun are. So I had this wonderful gift yesterday after the wedding. Of course, my introvertedness is never going to stay for anybody's reception or any of that. Like, can I get to the first car out of here? But this
Taxi
came, and I brought it up. Is this not the most beautiful thing you ever did see in your life?
Purple Poet, yes, it is.
Purple Poet. Now, clearly, you know how the kids keep the tag on it, right? I still had a tag on it. And I keep telling myself, honey, if you don't take that tag off. But while I was sitting, I was waiting to get Lady Gilmore to her car and her driver. She was so concerned about making sure she put this in my hand. Let me connect.
I was going to say it looked like Lady Gilmore.
For sure. Connect to why that's relevant to me as it relates to this topic on grief. My entire, when we talk about the pain of 2021, grieving the parental space of my life, what that role will never be. But now, whenever I speak and she's there, I'm kind of looking for her. So when they marched up the ministers, I still was looking like, I know she's here. Sure enough, caught her the second clip, and she does the same thing each time. She kind of hits her and does that, like sense of approval. So when I think back to any moment, you're standing there during the graduation speech for high school or college or any of the other multiple stages, I've never been able to look out and see a person saying, that's me there. And you've always, no matter how you've esteemed, you've always wanted it or felt that loss. And so she knows this somehow. I don't think I've ever told it to her in that words, but she's always finding my eyes, and she never drops her eyes from me, no matter what it is. Somebody actually did fall out at the wedding yesterday. She's still never going to stop looking at me. It's this sense of everything I have ever grieved in that term of a maternal piece. It's covered in that moment. And so when she's, and probably I can't take the tag off because it got her name on one side, my name on one side. She wasn't going to rest yesterday till she had put it in my hand. And she was like, your daughter is purple. And you walk with it and you be strong about it. And just bestowed it on me in private. So it's just mine. It is this separate little piece of God saying, even though it hurt you, honey, you decide the pieces of joy from the rest of this journey that you're going to take from it. I can't change all those other moments of my life. It has been me and me and me and me and me and just me. But at least for the past 4 or 5 times I've taken a stage, I look out and she's sitting right there. And so even though I didn't tell it to her, I look, you about got me. It's just God's way of saying, no matter what it is and how it cut you, I still can redeem this time.
Yeah.
I still can take this piece of ashes and give you beauty for it. I still can be in the midst of it. Even though ash is something, that thing is burnt up.
Yeah.
It's burnt. That's not
done.
coming back to life. I'm still going to give you beauty in the midst of it. So I think part of the job for us is not to try to take them ashes like dry bones and blow into them and say, can they live? It's to say, these ashes, God, what can you do with these ashes?
Yeah.
Can you give me beauty for this, as bad as this look? And if you would have asked me that a year ago, I would have said no. There ain't nothing I could do to make it feel better. And I guess last night I was so shocked, I don't know if I even said thank you. I just put my little cane in the car. I was like, this is weird. Let me get out of here.
I don't know if you remember, we had a phone call. It was during the summer, and I remember we were talking, and I said, I stopped. I said, I stopped because I realized the void that we were talking about, and all I can do is pray, because there is no counsel for what it's a spiritual void. The family void was so spiritual. It wasn't a matter of, well, let's rationalize this.
Yeah, can't rationalize that level of pain.
Yeah. And all I could do was pray in that moment.
But I see him healing it.
Yeah.
With something as simple as this.
Because ain't no prayers return void.
Heal
Prayer
it.
don't return void, though. I remember the time, and I was sitting on my nice little sunroom in my new apartment. And I remember we was talking, and I said, I'm sorry.
Oh, I do remember this conversation. Yeah. It's 2 things that you've said to me in this year of grief. And I didn't even know it was a year of good grief. We had that good to it. One was that. You said, honey, there was nothing to say past. I had explained to you the depth of this turmoil. And you said, honey, I'm sorry. I am sorry. And it was if in the way you were saying it, you were apologizing for the world. I was like, whoa. And then the second thing you said to me one day, I was really feeling despondent and despair about a lot of it. And you said, there is nothing left for you to do but crawl onto the lap of Jesus. Just the personification of that when he's already so real and so good. I told you that. I was like, I took those words, and it was at probably my lowest day of this year. I said, that's literally what I did. I crawled into his lap.
The only reason I can give that to you is because I've done it myself. I wasn't telling you something that I thought was some good sounding words. I've, in my own pain, have had to crawl up into his lap.
And stay there.
And stay there and just
wrap you in that place.
And cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a hard place, but it's a safe place to be. It's a safe place. That's where I was this morning. And then my girlfriend called and said, "Get up, get up." We getting on the phone, and then my girlfriends got on, and we had a little day party on, and I spent the day laughing instead of crying because
I saw you post that.
Yeah, because I really, it was the pain with this loss.
Is that okay to party in the midst of your grief?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. The song that comes to mind when you said that piece about the crowd in his lap, I'll just do a little bit. I've come to pour my praise on him like oil from Mary's alabaster box. Just the whole imagery of that, like I can just don't be angry if I take the time and wash his feet with my tears. Can I do that? Can I just, and God being so human that know, and so real and so spirit and so God and so all of it, that he could feel every bit of it. I'm like, God, you know some of this is a little ugly.
Yeah.
God like, come on, honey, try me. Come on, what you got? And being able to, not for the sake of God, for the sake of me, being able to really verbalize the point. I'll never forget that day. Because in my head, I could almost, as a writer and a poet, see this little girl climbing up. Just climbing up.
Yeah.
That's, talk about grief, that's a word I don't know. I've never sat on a father's lap. Let me grieve that. That's never going to happen in this lifetime. That ship has sailed. Ain't nobody dance with my father. Ain't no dancing with no father. This is it. It's never going to happen. I've never called anybody daddy, father, pop-ups, pa. It never happened, which makes, instead of the grief and the pain of it, at this age, it makes my relationship with God so sweet.
Yeah.
It does. It makes it sweet because it's real. You're the only father I've ever known. So you're not just my heavenly father. Like, you're it.
Yeah.
God, you're it. And I trust you so much with the pain and brokenness. And I do hope that you explain it to me. Because you gave me in the midst of this broken places. And that hurt so bad. Took me forever to really reconcile it. You gave me a great mission and service to others and humanity to carry amidst this brokenness that sometimes turn into anger. And I've shared that with you. Like, God, what's your purpose? You had no real purpose for honey. Did you? And you can't say that to everyone. Yeah. Because some people expect you just to be on. No, and I'm not on. I need to tell somebody, look, this is what I'm broken and I'm broken about and I don't understand. Oh, saint, you better get to praying. No, let me just say what I feel right now. Is that okay?
Can I be in my reality?
Right, but you can't always with everybody. You better learn that too.
No, you got to get some safe space.
You got some safe space with people who, number one, you can't be a part of my safe space team. We can kick it, but you can't be in my safe space team if you don't know how to get a prayer through.
Right.
I don't care in any role major in my life. If you can't pray, it's going to be rough for you to stay at that post. Because when I need it, trust me, I'm praying for you, but when I need it, I need to know that you pray. So if you've ever asked me to pray for you, they no joke, I'm praying.
Right.
Like, let's get it, Robyn.
Right. Right. I think like a month ago or so, I put a post up that said, we're entering into a season of grief. I had no idea what I was speaking, but here we are. We're entering into a season of grief. And grief is heavy. It's a heavy load to carry, so make sure you take breaks along the way. And it's a long road, and I think people try to rush it. Grieve, do your process, do your work.
What does that even mean?
What does that mean? We say so many cliche things. Grief is a long road. When you've had somebody in your life, when you've had people in your life, whether good or bad, and then they cease to exist. Scriptures say we don't grieve like the world. It don't say we don't grieve. When they cease to exist.
Right.
That is a notion. when you had visions for your life and they do not come to fruition, and you have to say, okay, it's just not what it's going to, it ain't going to be what it is. That is a notion to deal with. You have to learn you have to grieve that thing, and it may take as long as it's going to take, however long it's going to take, and you may get stuck. You have to learn to put that load down and take a break, and that means you might have to laugh a little bit, you party a little bit, you take whatever you got to do to take that break. You don't feel any guilt about it, because guess what's going to be there when you decide to stop? That grief going to be there. It ain't going nowhere. You put that load down, you take a break. You go see a movie. You get on the phone. You go out with your friends. You do what you need to do. It's going to be there. I had a client at my day job. He's got disabilities and developmental intellectual disabilities. So he's stuck in his grief, and it broke my heart. Just met him last week, and he mentioned something about the monster at home when he gets home from work. The monster is the loneliness. His mother passed, and his whole life got upside down, and he no longer is in his home. He's about 50-something years old, I think.
But how old developmentally were you?
He probably is teenager, probably. But he just, he says he was joking when he said it, but no, you weren't joking, because I know. You really feel that when you come home at night, it's just the quiet. And I said, no, quiet can be so loud sometimes. Yeah. So grief is heavy. Yeah. And we like to make light of it, like you just do your work and move on, and we got to push through this grief process.
Why?
Right?
Why do you have to push through?
I don't know. Right now,
can't you experience it?
This the uncle who would, for me, the one who always had the ice cream money, because my parents was always, we ain't gonna buy no ice cream. But this uncle come in town and he'd bought the ice cream truck money. This uncle put you on his lap and let you steer the truck while he pushing the pedals, when you were a little kid. The one let you stay up late. Yeah. The one scare you with the boogeyman monsters. Now you can't sleep because he scared you all night long. And we got stories for days. He would terrorize us. He'd take us swimming. My brother told me a story yesterday. He never told me. He got him up in the middle of the night or early one morning when he's down south and took him crocodile hunting. I'm like, you ain't never tell me that? He showed him how to shine a light and look for the gold eyes in the water.
Yeah, fun stuff. Right.
Talking
about my Florida days.
Right, like I don't know nothing about this, because this is what he would do with the boys. The boys got more adventures than I did, because I was a little girl, I get all the spoiled stuff, but they get the adventures, so they got all kinds of crazy adventures. Yeah. But you mean to tell me they got to do the work, get over it, let's move on? No,
I think you dishonor even the legacy of a person.
No.
Kind of trying to crunch their piece
right
into a 45-minute memorial.
Right.
But then after that?
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah. I mean, this is they gonna be with you forever.
Yes, for sure. And how do you memorialize a person without building shrines to them? One of the things all of and I'm just processing this right now, all of the deaths of this year, they've been twins that are connected to me. The best friend from high school, twin. Birthday just one day different from my twin sister and I. May 30th, May 31st. The little boy whose funeral we did, the 8-year-old, a twin. So in both of the cases, both this little 8-year-old and Corinne, they are saying the same thing. I lost my other half. I lost my other half. To have a little person saying that. And one of the things his mother, after like the third week when I went to her house, one of the things I promised her, everyone's here now because, you lost your house to a fire, you lost everything. I give you my word that when it's all said and done, I'm still going to be here. Yeah. I'm going to be here cooking. I'm going to be here. The stuff behind the scenes you know about because I tell you, but people don't know. And she said, honey, I haven't cried in 2 weeks now on that day. And she said, she was telling me some stuff that was going on with her financially and just some really rough stuff. As you could imagine, when you lose everything, including one of your children, suddenly. And she said, I just haven't cried and I feel guilty because I haven't cried in 2 weeks. And it was on that day, I called you in the middle of it.
Uh-oh.
Remember,
Yeah,
I called you in the middle
yeah.
of it. And she said, I just want to cry. And on that day, boy, did she ever. And she broke and told me I didn't ask because I didn't want to push.
Yeah.
All I knew is what I needed to know. Your house completely burned to the ground and one of the babies didn't make it out. I didn't ask who, what, when, where, why. But on this particular day afterwards, she was ready. And she was going to tell me everything she could, all the senses, what the house smelled like, what was the temperature, what voices did she hear in her mind, very convinced that she saw the last son run past her and the wall of fire and nobody but his twin saying, But had she not had the spirit of the child, had she not seen it the way she would have, of course she would have went back in and risked her life to save him. She was convinced that everybody was out. Everybody wasn't out. Only the twin knew he was trying to, as tragic as that is, but I let her talk through all of it. Even on the inside, I was screaming, I don't want to hear any more of this. This is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
But she needed to that day.
She
and when
released
she finally just grabbed, screaming, I mean, I'm soaked down to my skin. And then I called you in the midst of, because I recognized, it doesn't have to be Robyn, but you need to set up a further, whether you believe it now or not, but you saw some things that night that would change the rest of your life. Thing that she said that night that stuck with me, she says, I would never see the 16-year-old him. He will forever be 8 in my head. And she was crying, I'll never see him go to homecoming. She was grieving the him that she'll never see.
Yes.
So even though I have his twin brother, I won't have that.
Yeah.
So to give her space to be able to grieve, she's like, I know you probably think I should be, I don't think you should. I think you should be right where you're at. I know you're ready to go home. I'm not. You're fine.
Yeah.
I don't care if that means we about to be here to midnight. That's what we're going to do. Many nights like that with her because she deserves the first year first. You haven't even started. I told her this recently. You haven't even started the grief process.
Yeah.
You had a whole first year. If his first birthday again, this year, first Christmas again, first Christmas without them. It'll be the first, the first of everything, the first spring, the first, you got a whole first year before you even are going to begin this grieving process and give yourself that first year to start it and then start it with therapy when you're ready. So to tell people to do that and not put on, you don't have to do it anybody else's way, but you deserve to do it and to talk through it and to tell me all of your fears why you don't want to talk through it. And I don't know what I'm doing here, but this is what she wanted to talk about. The blaze, what the house, when the alarm went off. Why couldn't she? Could she have done this better? Could she have saved her son? Why would God do this? And allow and to be present with her through that process. Has been a lesson like I've never experienced this year.
Yeah.
God, why me?
Yeah.
Why am I grieving myself? But also dealing with grief like nothing I've ever seen. And I'm the person that they're looking, honey, they're bringing the ashes to the house. You must be here. Well, I gotta be here. So
because it's a ministry in itself to be present and to sit with a soul when a soul is in such pain.
Yeah.
That is a different kind of it's and it because a lot of people don't have a hush spirit about them. And so they don't know how to shut up in those times.
Yeah.
And they want to give all kinds of advice and say all kinds of stuff and be all kinds of busy and all kinds of, and in that her soul was so broken. Her soul was so wounded. That is a spiritual attending that was needed in that moment. And so God put you on appointment. I know in your mind you like, my mental can't take this, but at that moment your spirit knew exactly what to do with her and to be present and to just be. And in our today, I know too many people who would have been there trying to tell her cognitively how she should feel and what she should think. Girl, and what she should, you're going to be okay. And you can't feel any guilt and you don't need to think, but to just be able to sit and hear her say whatever she needs to say, that's a different kind of attending to someone, and everybody ain't got it.
The other thing people don't allow people to do is to grieve differently. So if you got a house full of young people, everybody at the funeral gonna have T's printed. They don't dress like we used to dress now.
Yeah.
T's printed with the person's picture on it, and everybody drinking. So when I first walked up to the one house, people are all, oh, Miss Honey, you know, we sorry. We got to. What are you sorry for?
Right.
Why are you sorry?
Yeah.
What is there to be sorry? What are you sorry for? I don't know. We just thought maybe you'd say, "You're all right, brother. Let me just come in here and just see how everybody doing." That's all I'm trying to do.
Right.
Now, had I come with a different spirit, I'm coming up in here. Y'all better pour out any self-righteousness. I wouldn't have been able to reach them at all. So they don't care about what you're trying to fix, what you're trying to bring. Real healing was, let me put my own sanctimonious self unnecessarily, that's not who I proclaim to be, aside so I can really see what you need, you know?
Yeah. And it's very necessary. When we're dealing with soul care, there's a book, Soul Care, Care of Souls is what it's called, Care of Souls, and talks a lot about that. And we have to become very cognizant of how you are present with a soul and what's happening at a soul in that moment. Everybody's all, you know, and I don't want to make this the new hype word, but everybody's all about awareness and mental health awareness, and you're really not being aware in that either.
Yeah.
I'm just so over the popularization of a whole lot of things because people think they're being aware and they're not. But can we be aware of souls? Can we be present with people? Can we sit like the old folks used to do? Yesterday, as I was sitting with my mother and aunt, you know, I said earlier, I sit with the old elders. That's what I do. But my crowd is getting smaller. And I said to my best friend this morning, I ain't gonna have nobody sit with after a while. And that's weighing on me. But as my generation all disappeared for a little while, I was sitting in the living room with my aunt and my mom and hearing stories that I probably heard 50 billion times already. But that's what I do. I sit. And I've been doing that since I was little. And I still can do that now. So if something was to happen to anybody, I know how to sit with people. And I always tell people, we have to get that back.
Yeah.
When something happens, go sit. Shut up and go sit with them. Let them tell whatever story they want to tell, however they want to tell it.
Right.
Put your advice box away and just sit.
Right.
That's how you help somebody grieve. However they want to tell the story. If they want to cuss, don't. People talk the language they need to talk. Yeah. It's just words. It's not going to offend your spirit. Your spirit's not going to be flawed or bruised because somebody said a few 4-letter words or longer.
Right. You heard it before. Come on.
Right.
And let that be not just for others. Let that be also for yourself. How do you learn how to give yourself permission to sit with your grief? Give yourself permission to be there and it be okay. One of the things, not just as it relates to grief, but wellness, I am very aware that coming off of a year like this, if I finish up every grant and process and program and all the things on my list, and there are a lot before the year closed, I need to go and sit and be in the woods, like the retreat this weekend, just absent from a group of young leaders. I need to just sit and be and give myself permission to grieve off the year. So I need to do that pretty early on. I need to not wait until February, March. First, right after the mayor swearing in, which is the January 8th, right after I do that, I need to sit a while and just get the grief off and give myself that permission to rest.
Oh, Pastor, we done went way over. No, we going? Keep going? Okay, all right.
Can you tell me in this place to give me, if this is the only opportunity you get to really, really remember your uncle, what are the 3 things for yourself, for your family, maybe something you want someone else to remember? What are the 3 things you either remember or you would want someone else to know?
As far as memory, stories, or characteristics about him?
Anything. Characteristics, it could be a story. Just, this is the legacy of how it will be for me.
Okay, so there's this, 7 minutes though. Okay, there's this one story I got to put on the record. This is the epitome of my uncle. So my uncle was a hard-headed man. You know, he was the kid that was rebellious. He went and enlisted at 17 years old. You know, this was during a draft time. My Uncle Roscoe already got drafted into the Navy. This man went and enlisted himself in the Marines. My grandma was fighting to get him out. But he went ahead and enlisted himself, and by the time they was going to fight, he'd have been 18, so they said, go ahead and let him stay. So he shouldn't have never been in the first place. Something happened. I'm going to go on record and say, because he showed me the paperwork a few years ago when those beasts came running out the house. I couldn't get out the car. He wanted me to...
You and the beast.
He wanted me to see that the story was always told that he got hit, his tank got hit by some Vietnam soldiers, and it flipped over, and it wasn't. He was hit by friendly fire. Americans hurt him. He was hit by the Americans. Just for the record, he sued, and there's some paperwork. He showed it to me. He said, I want you to know this. I want you to see this. This was the Americans who did this to me. So there's that piece. But when that happened, he had got a brace from the neck down. And he had to come back to America, and he was in the hospital. And it was around holiday time. It was at Christmas or Thanksgiving. My grandma told me this story because I told you I'm going to keep her the story, so I'm going to tell the story. So if my family's watching, you get to hear this good story. So he was on a neck brace. But he's the hard-headed one. He was the one who always used to skip school, do whatever he was doing. I got you. And so he decided, I'm going home to see my family for the holidays. I want some good food. So he catches the bus, and he lays down on the back of the bus. Remember the back seats of the bus used to be a bench? So he lays down on the back of the bench, catches the bus. He goes AWOL. Lays down on the back of the bench, and he catches a cab, lays in the back seat of the cab, and shows up at my grandma's door for, I want to say it's Thanksgiving, for Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner, one of the two. And they eat dinner until the military police arrive. How this man made it all the way home with a brace from the neck down. That's my uncle. When he get his mind set to something, he do it. Y'all want to know where this stubbornness I got come from? And also the temper. That side of the family, that's my uncle. And so that's part of the memory. His legacy is that stubbornness. And when we set our mind to something to get it done, it's going to be done. So that's my Uncle Aaron. There's plenty of stories, funny stories. He was always a tall tale and tell us all kinds of stuff as kids, make us believe in all kinds of crazy stuff. You go to his house, there's a gun under the pillow. He telling us that's the one that shot me in one ear, come out the other. It's just all kinds of tall tales, you know. But, you know, that was the fun, forever young Aaron Johnson. And I loved him, still love him. So this is the hardest for me. And it's hard just because we just in this season, as my dad said, y'all in a new season of life where all your elders is disappearing. The little girl in me is struggling. Whew. She's struggling right now.
Well, we will continue to pray for you, Robyn, and not just for you, for anyone else who might be tuning in either live or after the show. We say it not just in terms of a cliche, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that's so much higher and allow me to soak into those moments of joy and peace and find refuge there. When I'm driving home, I would think about this little girl standing up driving, but she's not driving, as he's on his pedals, as I don't know that experience, but the safety of this uncle. And may you rest in the peace of those memories and the joyful laughter that we had off record yesterday about the family together in those memories. And for everyone else, give yourself freedom and permission to grieve. Do that in a healthy way. Do that in a safe way. And as you enter into the holidays, know your own grief patterns and already set up some moments and strategies for wellness so that the grief doesn't trap you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Pause.
Thank you.
We will be back next week.
Thank you, my sister.
You're my sister, and I'm praying for you.
Thank you.
And I know you're praying for me.
I'm praying for you. Yes, I am. And that's a wrap.